And the last climb that we did that afternoon resulted in the tragedy. He fell and he died. He had a catastrophic failure of his protection system. I was the belayer. There was nothing to do. And that became the turning point and the start of it all. I had the choice to say, okay, this is too dangerous, I give up, and just hide in my corner, or embrace it and say, this is it. I chose to not hide away from it, but to embrace it. That was a lesson that I took to heart. I am not going to wait for a tragedy to pursue these ideas.
The purpose of today's interview is to learn what drives a man to pursue incredible feats after facing a heartbreaking tragedy. What does he hope to accomplish? What is he running towards? Or what is he running from? What lessons has he learned? What sacrifices has he made? Did he find what he was looking for? Today's guest is someone whose life redefines what's possible when grit meets purpose. Erden Eruc holds an incredible 18 Guinness World Records, including becoming the first person to circumnavigate the globe by human power, rowing across oceans, biking across continents, and even climbing mountains along the way. But behind the records is a story of tragedy, resilience, and transformation. From losing a climbing partner who inspired him to finally pursue his dreams, to facing loneliness on the open ocean, to discovering what truly gives life meaning, Erden's journey is about much more than endurance. In this conversation, we talk about what drove him to take on larger-than-life challenges. We talk about the turning point that pushed him to commit. We talk about his childhood and how it shaped his adventurous spirit. We talk about the sacrifices he and his family made for him to complete these goals. And we talk about the wisdom he's gained about purpose, perseverance, and showing up to life. His story is not just about adventure. It's about faith, it's about resilience, and it's about the power of asking, what if? Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Erden Eruc, an adventurer whose accomplishments redefine human endurance. He holds an astonishing 18 Guinness World Records, including the first person to complete a solo circumnavigation of the globe by human power. He rowed across oceans, biked across continents, and even climbed some mountains along the way. Over the course of his journey, he has faced setbacks, loneliness, and unimaginable physical demands. Yet he continues to push forward with a spirit rooted in resilience and purpose. Beyond the records, his mission is to inspire others to dream bigger, persevere longer, and believe that we are all capable of far more than we can imagine. I'm honored to welcome him onto the show today. Thank you, Erden, for being with me.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, sir. So I read about you, I listened to your podcasts, I've read your blogs, and your story to me is very inspiring. I wanted to start with the question of why you decided to row all the way around the world, basically go around the world by rowing in the oceans.
I went around the world by human power, rowed across the oceans that were on my way, and then bicycled across continents, sea kayaked to get to paved roads as necessary. I had to walk north to south across Papua New Guinea. The desire to go around the world by human power started with the question, what if? Every worthy human endeavor starts with that question, I would imagine. And if we hold court to that question and let it take root and not dismiss it off the bat, it tends to take a life of its own, and then we find ways to make it happen. I have been an active person, physically active person all my life, so thinking of a human powered journey around the world was not a foreign concept to me. And so it was natural for me to wander. And then once I found ways to make it happen and started to develop the idea further, it turned into a project. It got deadlines, it got goals within itself, and then I started moving along on the journey. And it really was a matter of committing to the journey, really, and to get it done. So it was a personal quest, if you will, something that ended up transforming me along the way.
Now, I think originally your plan was not necessarily to row across the ocean. Is that right? You wanted to perhaps bike more, but the logistics didn't work out that way?
Well, what happened is initially I started thinking of an idea where I was in Washington, D.C., working in Silver Spring, Maryland, just on the outskirts of the city. And there was this world map hanging on the wall with Americas on the right, Pacific in the middle, and Old World on the left. I was born in Cyprus, raised in Turkey, and I've been in U.S. for a good long while now. And when I stood in front of this map, I would trace my finger from Washington, D.C. across the Bering Straits to Turkey. And that's when I asked, what if? Could I do this by human power? That required getting across the Bering Straits somehow and walking and bicycling a lot. That was the original plan. And as soon as I asked what if, I even gave it a name. I called it Journey Home. And that label gave it a handle, and it became a bit more possible in my mind. And I started looking for ways to get that done. I was looking for paths across Alaska and Kamchatka Peninsula. How would I navigate these? I didn't find proper maps. I was looking for uh, aerial charts that pilots would use, just any source I could find. And I was looking for similar journeys that had been done in the past. I was reading about these. And uh, eventually this idea evolved into, well, what would I do when I got to Turkey? And of course, if you got all the way there, then why stop? So I would bicycle on to Portugal, launch by rowboat across. So I was looking for ways to get across the Atlantic so that I could return to where I started. And uh, this idea simmered for a while. I looked for ways to get across an ocean by human power. At that time, British adventurer Jason Lewis was attempting to go around the world by human power, and he had built a boat that had a pedal-driven propulsion. And I said, well, I could build one of these. And then eventually I found the Ocean Rowing Society in London, which had used rowboats for sale. They were regularly organizing races from La Gomera in the Canary Islands to Barbados at the time. Nowadays, they're going to Antigua. And they had used boats for sale. And as a kit, I could get one of these. And that's how I said, all right, it is easier to buy a kit than try to start from scratch and build a boat. And that's how it all started. And knowing that I was going to row, I started rowing on the lakes of Lake Union, flatwater rowing in small rowing shells. And being a physical person, it wasn't foreign to me to train in a different discipline and apply all the training principles. And when I shared this with the rowing coach at the Pocock Rowing Center in Seattle, Washington, he said, "You're crazy, but I'll help you." So, yeah, that's how it started way
That's ac
back then.
So it started it sounds like, and tell me if I'm wrong, that you wanted to go home, essentially, a trek home, and you were gonna do and then it turned into, "Well, why don't I just keep going?" And your initial challenge, in a way, was to go across the Atlantic, but ultimately, it turns into rowing is what the medium you're gonna use, and you gotta go across the Pacific. That
Yeah.
that has to be a huge change in plans.
Well, what happened is, by then, by the time that I made this decision to start the circumnavigation proper, I was living in Seattle. I had moved from Washington, D.C. to Seattle for work purposes. And I had read the book by Joran Kropp, who had bicycled from Sweden to Nepal in 1996, towing his climbing gear behind him. He wanted to climb Everest, and he did achieve that. The book is Ultimate High, talks about his journey. And I got to meet him in Seattle, summer of 2001, when he came for a presentation. When I shared with him my ideas, he asked difficult questions. When are you starting? Do you have sponsors? Of course, I didn't have answers. I had more excuses than anything else to commit to this journey. And in the February of 2002, we ran across each other in Ouray, Colorado, during the ice climbing festival that they hold there. He was in the sponsor tent, holding court for the fans that he had. And I walked up to him and he said, "Haven't you started yet?" I said, "Well, September 11 happened. Is the world a safe place? Nobody wants to hear of these things anyway." So yeah, I had more excuses. I hadn't committed to anything. He told me that he was moving to Issaquah, that we should go climbing together when he does. And then he went quiet. In September of 2002, I got a surprise email saying he had just returned from Everest, one more climb, this time with his then fiancee Renata, that we should go climbing. And we agreed to meet in Eastern Washington at Frenchman Coulee on the hills adjacent to Columbia River. And these are short pitch basalt columns, half rope length high. And 30th of September, that day, on a cool fall day, sunny, clear skies, we did multiple pitches, multiple cracks next to each other. Basalt columns are just parallel cracks of various sizes and shapes. And the last climb that we did that afternoon resulted in the tragedy. He fell and he died. He had a catastrophic failure of his protection system. All the pieces that he put in when he fell pulled out except one. I was the belayer. There was nothing to do. And we were airlifted. And that became the turning point and the start of it all. That was 2002. Today is 2026, so that was 24 years ago.
Yes, when I'm reading your story and listening to you, it seems, and I think that would be just a huge, like a massive turning point in your life.
I
Um,
had the choice. I had the choice to say, okay, this is too dangerous. I give up. Yeah, this hasn't been pretty, and just hide in my corner and walk away from all adventure, or embrace it and say, this is it. I have now, a baton has been passed, and I have a mission now. I have this dream that I was nurturing for a good long while. I should then go ahead and get this done, because now we have proof that life is short. I don't have that much time. And that's what I chose. I chose to not hide away from it, but to embrace it and to give myself. In fact, I am grateful to Yoran in the way that he gave me permission to pursue my dream. Took a tragedy to get my rear in action. I always reflect and say, I waited too long. I waited for a tragedy to get to begin my journey. And that's a lesson learned. We often wait too long and dismiss our dreams, generate excuses. We can't become our own worst enemy in ways, and in some ways. So I think uh, that was a lesson that I took to heart. I am not going to wait for a tragedy to pursue these ideas. If I am able and capable, and I am young and I'm strong, therefore I can do it, I should do it.
Yeah, the story sounds heart-wrenching. I was telling my wife about what had happened to you, and she was as sad as I was. Um, so you two were climbing. I read that you were holding his rope when he fell and died. Um, and you picked up a rock for where he fell. I think it had some blood on it, his blood, and you carried it on this journey you took. Um, what what did that mean to you? Do you think do you think if he didn't have that terrible accident that day, do you think you would have taken your trip?
Uh, I'll answer the second question first. The answer is probably no, because I had plenty of excuses, and I would have just talked about it and eventually felt guilty and probably feel shame about having not started it, and then generate justifications that I had a career, that I had a new job, and I had a new home, and I probably had a family, I had children, whatever they would be. Commitments would pile up on this uh, city side, and I would never take off. That, I think, would have been the outcome. Just reflecting, I was too set in my ways to break that pattern. As for that rock, it was probably a week after the accident. We went back to the accident site. We were trying to understand what actually happened. There was a carabiner that was broken, and we were looking for pieces of this thing. Why did it break? Was it equipment failure because of manufacturing defects, or was it entirely just this uh, unexpected series of events that led to it? And in the end, when we did find those pieces, we were able to look at the cracked surface, and we didn't see any obvious defects. And yeah, it was an open carabiner failure. A carabiner is strong when the gate is closed. When the gate is open, then it just becomes a simple weak hook. And aluminum is not a very strong material, even when it's forged. So Uh, we were looking for answers, basically, to satisfy our own sense of uh, responsibility. And the rock was at the base of the climb where he had laid last.
You still have the rock?
I do. I was going to plant that on top of Everest had I ever gotten to it, but didn't happen that way.
Your How would you describe your relationship with him? You didn't know him for very long. You'd met him a few times. You'd climbed with him. Was was would you consider him an inspiration for you? Would you consider him a new friend, a close friend? How would you consider your relationship with him?
I think the relationship was more aspirational than anything else for me. And he was receptive and he was willing to explore the possibilities. I had ideas that, hey, this is an adventure. If we develop a friendship here, maybe we can do projects together in the future. I mean, you never know where these relationships go. It's true for any relationship that we embark on. And uh, it was a budding friendship, I would like to think. And with him making time to this new fan of his
Mhm.
meant a lot to me, and I had ideas, and he was a person who had done so much, and I thought that I need to know more about him. I need to explore this further. What made him tick? Wow, how was he able to see this through? What could I learn from him? Those were really my goals, and uh, these things happen naturally, organically, as we spend more time together. So that's what I was after. And where it would have gone from there had we not had the accidents, one never knows. I'd like to think that we would be good friends now. And uh, it was not a uh, it was not an easy experience to uh, accompany his mother and father, taking them to the accident site and then having them sit and reflect a bit. Uh, we had a
How was that?
it was emotional. I think uh, his mother told a story to Nancy and me, Nancy, my fiance then, that Yoram, when he was little, would tell his mother that he would come back as a bird to tell her he was okay had if anything happened to him. And then as we're sitting there, this small bird came and landed on
Wow.
the path where he had laid last, and we were just sitting right next to that spot, just reflecting. There was still this darker patch of dirt on the ground where he had laid, where his blood had dried up. And we all thought the same thing. That's him. So after that, when I was bicycling up to Alaska to climb Mount McKinley, every bird, every hawk, every such creature passing by and said, "Is that you?" It's an interesting uh, uh, human condition, I suppose. We try to assign meaning to these natural events, but then it's a nice thought to have. Why not nurture it?
Well, in a way, for you, to me, it seems like his death had a deep meaning. It had it was a catalyst for you to attempt something that perhaps you weren't ready for. mentally.
Mentally, no. Uh, but I had all the elements that in place that would have enabled me to succeed. And then what I lacked, I gathered along the way. I had to become the person who could succeed. So it was transformational in that way.
Yeah, it sounds extremely transformational. Let me tell. I want to go to your childhood because I haven't heard much about your childhood. I know you were born in Cyprus, right? And but raised in Turkey. Um, I read that your father may have taken you climbing, maybe started these ideas of adventure when you were young. This is how I like to picture it. But I don't know much else about your childhood. How was how was your life like growing up in Turkey? And tell me about your childhood.
My, I am, I come from a military family. My father was an officer in the Turkish army, and um, my mother was nurturing, caring. My father was uh, there expanding my horizons. I was raised on a path where they had the guardrails, but I was not restrained on how far I could venture. Uh, they encouraged physical activity. My father especially taught me how to ski, to swim. I would, when they were training, they're doing their mountaineering training or any exercises that they had with their troops. I was always in the mix, observing. They wouldn't shun me. And uh, when I was 11, I was in a boarding school, uh, just starting middle school after elementary school. So essentially, sixth grade, I was in a prep class in Izmir, away from home, uh, learning English so that I could start proper education as a boarding school student. And he asked me on the phone, "Have you passed all your classes?" I said, "Yes." "Well, I have a gift for you." So I returned home and he whisked me up this extinct volcano in south central Turkey, in Kayseri, in the city of Kayseri. There's a volcano that's 4,900 meters tall, called Erciyes. They had a search and rescue team coming in from Iran at the time, and it was a joint exercise between the Turkish army and their troops. So there we were. I was trying to keep up, step in their footsteps in the deep snow, getting buried up to my hip, struggling, but I made it up and came down, and that was a huge stretch
So
when I became a mountaineer.
you became a mountaineer that day. So
Yeah.
you're in boarding school. Your dad wants to challenge you, perhaps grow you in a way, and he sees it as a gift to you. So you go with your father, is it, and you do that, and you became a mountaineer that day, right? Did you So you do that, and then do you go back to boarding school and continue your studies and tell me more because I believe you became an engineer eventually, and then
Yes, I was in boarding school another 2 years after that. And my father was then assigned to NATO headquarters in Brussels, Belgium for 3 years. So ninth, 10th, and 11th grades, I was at the Brussels American High School. That's where I got exposed to organized sports more, track and field, wrestling, and cross country. And I'm still in touch with my high school coach, Al Rosner. He lives in Boston now. He has been a steady part of my life ever since, the elder brother I never had. And it's those are formative years. And we came back from Belgium the last year of high school, senior year, I was back to the same school where I was initially a boarding student. Uh, my father was assigned to Eastern Turkey. We stayed in Izmir in Western Turkey with my mom. My brother also was registered to the same school. This was a good school with uh, uh, a competitive outcome. We were raised well in that school, trained well in that school, so they really wanted us to be at that school. And out of that senior class, I went through the college entrance exams, placed 77th out of 400,000 in the college entrance exams. So yeah, we were competitive. And I registered as a student in the mechanical engineering department at the Boğaziçi University, the former Robert College on the Bosphorus. And that also is a good competitive school in Turkey. So, yes, I had a good education and stayed active, physical, placed second in intercollegiate wrestling competitions in Turkey in my senior year, juggling it with course commitments. We didn't have a wrestling team at the university, so I had to commute 2 hours out, 2 hours back, really sacrificing a lot of time while trying to graduate. So I did what I could. And then after I started master's program there and also in mechanical engineering. Since I couldn't commute to wrestle anymore, I picked up running. I started running more, so I ran the marathon in Istanbul the first time that they raced it, passing over the suspended bridge over the Bosphorus. It was a big deal. And then eventually I went to Ohio State University to pursue a PhD program in engineering mechanics, which is more theoretical than mechanical engineering. Uh, I completed everything there, passed my exams and everything except the dissertation. I have an ABD, not a PhD. It's all but dissertation. I had given myself 6 years, and at the end of that, I said, "That's it. I moved on." To have a PhD work, one needs to have a topic, has to have funding, and has to have an advisor. And at any given time, one of these legs was missing, and I just couldn't make it work. I rewrote my resume. My roommate was getting all sorts of calls from headhunters, and I was getting none. Is it what do you do? Was it that you do that's so special? So he introduced me to this collaborative software called Lotus Notes that uh, designed organized workflow in certain projects inside corporations, and it tapped into various existing databases and gateways to connect all of these. So once I got into that world, I learned it, installed it on my computer and learned it and taught it to myself, and then eventually started doing projects in that and reinvented myself really.
So
As
you went and you studied engineering initially, and then you go into like IT in a way,
Yeah, I
and
did.
you're
Yeah. So I sort of meandered into that path, and that was on the upswing of the IT wave
on the IT wave.
in the 90s. And I was working for Digital Equipment Corporation, which eventually got and then Lotus Development Corporation itself. Doing consulting work, I traveled all the way to Venezuela to set up the systems for Banco de Venezuela there, and commuting back and forth while I was doing an executive MBA on the weekends. It was quite busy times.
So the trip around the world, you it took you 5 years and 11 days to complete it.
Yes.
You left from California. You traveled across the Pacific. Um, I think you had some issues in Papua New Guinea. Uh, uh, kind of walk me through the path of that you took, and then I wanted to ask you, when 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 you were done with it, what you learned about yourself from after this trip or during this trip.
I uh, so if we rewind back to the accident happened in September, and on the way back from Iran's funeral in November of 2003, I drew the world map on a piece of paper and marked the highest summit on each continent. And I said, I am going to climb each one of these in his memory. I wasn't going to go to Antarctica. I didn't think it possible at that time to go there by human power and reach Vincent. So I called it Six Summits Project. And the first summit that I went to was Mount McKinley in Alaska. I started from Seattle in September of 2000, February 1st of 2003, and then reached the summit 29th of May that year after walking the length of the Kahiltna Glacier for 2 weeks with two other friends, and then two more friends flew in with added supplies, and we reached the summit 29th of May. So that was summit number one. I then prepared myself for ocean rowing, obtained an ocean rowboat in 2004, and with that, rowed across the Atlantic Ocean from Canary Islands, Las Palmas to Guadeloupe in 96 days. That's when I felt ready to take on the oceans. And finally, 10 years after I first traced my finger across that map in 2007, I launched from Bodega Bay, July 10, 2007. I launched and made it across to Papua New Guinea waters. I was not able to cross the equator because it turned into a strong La Nina year that year, which strengthens the trade winds, northeast and southeast trade winds. So each time I tried to cross the equator, I was pushed back, and so I ended up going west more than I could go south. And 312 days later, trapped on my boat, running low on food, trapped in the wrong hemisphere in the wrong season. We had to have the boat lifted by the Philippine fishermen who were in those waters. I thought it was all over, and then I had to start over on this whole thing, rethink the whole approach. The Philippine fishermen, the fishing company, Frebel Fishing Corporation, they said, well, we'll take you back to the same spot. We go there all the time. So they hauled my boat and myself all the way over to General Santos City on the island of Mindanao in the Philippines. That's where their base was. And that was May of 2008. And I returned there Christmas of 2008. I was there with them again, and then we sailed, got on this big reefer vessel, refrigerated transport vessel that collects all the tuna that they catch back to markets. So they had all the supplies, salt and everything else that they need in the operations, and they sailed all the way back and dropped me at the same spot January 15 of 2009. And so I worked my way south to Bismarck Sea, on the Bismarck Sea, and then landed at Finch Harbor on the Papua New Guinea shores on the north side. That I had injured my back in the process. We don't know how it happened, when it happened. I was not able to stand straight. My lower back was shot. And so there was no way to do anything but wait and heal. So I returned home, healed my back, timing the seasons. I returned there yet again. I did a bit of a beach walk to near Leh. The port of Leh is still on the north side of Papua New Guinea, just southeast of Finch Harbor. And then from there, I progressed southeast by kayak to Oro Bay, which is just north of Kokoda, where the Kokoda track starts. So I ended up kayaking to Oro Bay and then walking south the length of the Kokoda track and learning more about that stuff. And then eventually made it to Port Moresby, relaunched by rowboat from uh, Port Moresby, negotiated the Great Barrier Reef, which was scary, and
Huh.
ended up at the mouth of Escape River, which is just south of um, Thursday Island. As I was rowing across the Coral Sea, I would have the Coast Guard, the Australian Coast Guard plane pass overhead, hail me and say, "Yeah, you have to go to Port Moresby, remember." I said, "Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know." Each time they would do this to me, but I didn't have much control over where the ocean was going to take me because there are very strong currents, tidal currents happening back and forth between the Arafura Sea and the Coral Sea
Uh-huh.
near Cape York. So there's really no way to fight these things. And once I inside the Great Barrier Reef, I could drop anchor, control my destiny a bit as the tides changed, and I would wait if the tide was fighting me and then start again when the tide turned to my favor. So as such, I worked it all the way to the mouth of Escape River and got permission from the customs. And they are very strict about quarantine requirements. They really wanted me to go to to Thursday Island. So we negotiated that, yeah, I could be towed there if I came close to the shore. As long as I didn't go on shore, I was okay. So I came to within 250 meters of the shore at the mouth of Escape River. The boat that we had hired came in the morning at 7 a.m. and then took me to Thursday Island. We got there just as it was getting dark. And they did all the customs gymnastics. Then eventually I took a kayak to that same spot and continued south from there to Cooktown. It took me about 2 weeks to get there. Negotiated crocodiles, saltwater crocodiles and such along the way.
Wow. Wow.
That deal with sandflies. I'm allergic to them, it turns out. It was really annoying. And made it to Cooktown. That's where the paved roads came. And then after that, I could bicycle. So from Cooktown, clockwise around coastal Australia, I made it all the way to Carnarvon in Western Australia. Then we moved the boat to the west coast of Australia, and I relaunched from there toward Africa. I decided to bypass Everest and Elbrus along the way because of financial concerns. In 2008, 2010, financial crisis did not help. And I got to Madagascar after crossing the Indian Ocean. Along the way, the biggest concern was piracy. Somali pirates were active, and I was in touch with the frigate, the Turkish frigate that was part of the combined task force, the international naval presence that was formed. And with my luck, as I was approaching Africa, the Turkish frigate Gaziantep was the flagship, and I was in touch with the rear admiral on board. He was giving me information about where the piracy activity was. So I wanted to go to Kenya, but I was told that wouldn't be safe. So we agreed that I should pass close to north end of Madagascar and then beeline toward the shores of Mozambique using the Mozambique current, go south away from the piracy zone. But it turns out there are big eddies that form as the currents negotiate that flow that happen on the west side of Madagascar. And so I got sucked into one of these eddies. These things are 200-mile in diameter, are huge, and they flow at 2 knots and such. And there's no way to fight them with a rowboat. So I was pulled away from African shores and I fought my way out of this big eddy. It was counterclockwise, so I went on the periphery of it and then peeled away from it toward northwest shores of Madagascar and got off the water because I was having water spouts around me that just were becoming threatening. It was just the beginning of the cyclone season. So
So
I
you
made
so you, so you go from California, Papua New Guinea, Australia, you come around, bike to the west end, then you go past Madagascar to
I ended up on on Madagascar
mm-hmm.
in November of 2010, and then I had to wait the cyclone season. I relaunched from there in March, following March, and then worked my way across to Mozambique, across the Mozambique Channel. Then it was land phase again. The logistics were the nightmare in all of these, trying to get the boat off the water onto a cradle that we would custom make at each arrival point, and then put it in a container or a storage space where it would be under guard safe. Until then, I am married to this boat at the hip, and I would then receive my bicycle, which I would have packed in advance. All my kit would arrive by UPS or some other means, courier service. And so my wife would be the logistics manager at home, sending this stuff to me, if not bring them in person. And so then I bicycled from Mozambique north across Mozambique into Tanzania until I reached near the Kenyan border there to climb Kilimanjaro. A dozen friends came, having raised funds to help the Moteves middle school there, where the children of the porters who were going to help us went to school. So we helped build a classroom at that school with that money. And once Kilimanjaro was done, my father came to climb with me
Your
after,
father came. So you gave him a gift now, huh?
yeah, after having taken me up my first climb, we had this father-son moment at the summit. He was then 79 years old. That was his last serious climb. So that was a gift, I think. And my wife came, friends came. It was a good, memorable event. And from there, I bicycled on across Tanzania and Zambia into Namibia and relaunched south of Walvis Bay. Luderitz Bay is where I launched. Luderitz, then it became a record 154 days, I believe, long crossing across to Venezuela. I was trying to get into the Caribbean so that I could go west toward US, but the winds were just pressing me down. I couldn't negotiate around Trinidad and got sucked in south of Trinidad. So I got off the boat at Venezuela, and one day of cycling got me north of this one peninsula I couldn't negotiate by rowboat. And then we trucked the rowboat. After 10 days, I relaunched from there. 69 days later, I was at Louisiana, pulling into Calcasieu Pass in Louisiana. And that's where I landed. And then from there, it took me a month to bicycle to my starting point, which was the end of the circumnavigation. I uh, I had to negotiate all the seasons on and off, weather, of course, and the logistics, all of it extended this to 5 years, 11 days. Had I not been caught by this La Nina and had I made it to Australia in one push from California, I could have probably finished the circumnavigation in about 3.5 years. So still these 5 years, 11 days stands as the fastest circumnavigation by human power. It's one of the records that I have. And the previous record was by Jason Lewis that I mentioned. He took 13 years to complete his circumnavigation. When it was time to register these records with Guinness, uh, I made sure that he was recognized, that we, because they were going to announce me as the first circumnavigation by human power ever. And because he had others with him on his ocean crossings, they weren't going to recognize his effort. We said, no, that's not right, because he was the engine in all of this, and people came and went. And on land, I had people with me bicycling on and off, walking with me on and off. I wasn't, in principle, I wasn't alone either. But I tried to push this concept of self-propelled with Guinness World Records.
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. So you go from California, Papua New Guinea, Australia, you make your way to Africa. You're on you're rowing, you're on kayak, you walk some, you're on a bike. Then you go to the west coast of Africa, to Venezuela, to Louisiana, and back to California. In that whole trip, what was the hardest part for you?
I think the hardest part for me was uh, trying to keep the journey in motion. Separation was difficult. Africa became very difficult because with Nancy, we were not happy with the way that the journey was evolving. I was complaining a lot. I was under a lot of pressure to perform and to stay in motion. I wasn't happy with the traffic and how little value life had on the roads of Africa with fast moving buses and such. Uh, Bad roads, bad traffic, bad drivers, I thought. And whenever I called her, I was complaining, and she was pushing back, saying, "Where's the joy? Why don't you come home? Why don't you quit?" No, I'm not going to quit. So we kept having this. At the same time, we were having financial pressures. So by then, our budget deficit had reached over $200,000. It was just becoming untenable. And there I was spending money, and there she was holding the fort at home. All our savings were being used up. All our income was being used up. And so none of it bode well. But I did make the argument saying, I skipped Everest, I skipped Elbrus, I am going to skip Aconcagua as well. I am going to finish this thing. We're going to have this feather in our cap. It's going to be the circumnavigation done. Without the circumnavigation, we have wasted our time and money. So that was really my position. I had to finish this thing. Quitting became a non-starter, no option, not a valid option. So stayed on it, and I finished it.
That's a massive accomplishment. I mean, to not just by you, of course, by you. I mean, that's obvious, but your wife, right, and everyone that helped you along the way. That's a huge sacrifice
It is.
that that all of you made for you to accomplish this.
And we certainly strained our relationship, uh, and she had to be extremely patient with it all. I asked a whole lot from her, and then when I finished at Bodega Bay, uh, during the last 3 weeks or so, she was from Arizona onward. She was uh, driving alongside. She would go arrange the hotel. I would go meet her, find her. We would do this on and off. We essentially traveled together in the last phase of this, and we made it to Bodega Bay. And then within 24 hours of my arrival, she had to fly home to to Missouri, where her mother was in hospice care. During the whole thing, she was saying, "Mom, I'll be there soon. Just hang on." That was Nancy's concern there, that during that last bit of my journey. And then I stayed another day or so. A Columbine shooting happened just as I was pulling in, 21st of July, 2012. So media attention was elsewhere. I wasn't getting the coverage I wanted. I see, the thing is, I had piled a whole lot of expectations on top of my journey. I started a nonprofit to educate and inspire children. Nonprofits, I had a slogan: we have to get into classrooms to inspire children. We have to get into living rooms where the parents are for access and donations, and boardrooms where the sponsorships are. So we had room to grow, I would say. That was my little cheeky slogan there. But then we weren't getting the coverage. We were getting no visibility. And even when I reached Madagascar, after having been announced the first person to have rode 3 oceans, I hadn't even finished the circumnavigation yet. When I contacted a certain magazine, they responded saying, "Well, we'll have a feature article when you complete your circumnavigation." So they weren't going to write about the first person to have rode 3 oceans. It wasn't good enough. So the message I kept getting, whether for sponsorships or coverage: "You're not good enough. You're not good enough. Do more. Do more." And here I was trying to inspire children and tell the story, and I didn't get access. I didn't get the coverage. I didn't get the visibility, and it became a big frustration. And after I finished the circumnavigation, I went after these various media outlets and said, "Okay, now it's your job to cover this," but they weren't interested. And I stayed another day after Nancy left, and I said, "What am I doing here? I'm trying to make people who don't care like me, and this is unlike me. This is rubbing me the wrong way. And also, I belong with Nancy where she needs me." So I then hurried to make it to Missouri and landed in St. Louis. And then another drive later, I arrived at 6 a.m. that morning, uh, and mother was falling in and out of coma. She woke up, said, "Erden, is that you?" Recognized my voice, and then went back down again. They were having great trouble moving her. I helped move her, clean her, and everything else. They needed that strength. And uh, the night of my arrival, she was moved to the hospital where she could receive better care. And 2 a.m. that morning, we're in the room. She wakes up. She says, "Ice cream." And there I am running around in the hospital, finding a nurse trying to say, "Hey, I need a scoop of ice cream here." And they went into the freezer, got me some. I ran back. We fed her a spoon of ice cream. She went back down again, never woke up. And that was, I was at the right time, there at the right time when I was most needed. I think that was the beginning of the healing as well between me and Nancy.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. Couple of things, but first, you take this whole circumnavigation trip. You have these expectations that, as important as it is to you, you would think it should be covered more. It should be made important with news and human accomplishment. And as you're going through this and you're nearing the end, and then you reach the end, there's some other major news that kind of takes the fire of your finish. Um, and that must have been extremely frustrating and disappointing. And then you have this whole life event. Your wife's mom is dying, and you question yourself, what am I doing trying to make my accomplishments seen by others? Uh, I should go be by my wife's side and my mother-in-law's side, and you make that realization and you actually do it. and I think you're proud of doing that. I think maybe, or I would assume you're proud. I you probably, I how does someone so people in life, okay? Sometimes we go through life and we have these expectations. We want our life to be a certain way. We do things with a certain intention. And then we get to the end after this hard work. Someone gets to the end and then you realize that, well, no one ever really cared about it as much as I did. It's a tough pill to swallow. If someone's going through something like that, what advice would you give them uh, in how to deal with that?
I think one of the litmus tests that we can apply is to any endeavor is, would I do this if no one cared? And ask that question honestly and then answer it honestly. And say, am I doing this for myself? Is it for my own gratification? Am I going to feel better after this is done? Or am I doing this to impress others? Am I doing this so others like me better? I think that's a very important distinction to have. It really cuts through the fog and clarifies why we do things. And having that why properly answered is critical because it really allows us to focus our energies, our resources, our relationships. It calibrates everything properly so that we're honest in our efforts. Um, if I am working on something because I'm obligated versus I'm doing something because I'm in the zone and I am properly enjoying this and it adds meaning to my life, um, then I have a different level of motivation and attachment to that project. Obligations can be, uh, there are obligations where it's our duty and it becomes part of our identity. You become a father, you have an obligation to your family, you become a husband, you have an obligation, you're a son, you have an obligation. These obligations are not to be dismissed. They're to be honored because it defines who we are and who we will be in the future. Uh, and they nourish our memories and they feed our character. They define who we are. But then there are other obligations that are to workplace or to the community or to the Rotary Club or whatever nonsense that we keep piling on that takes us away from these primary obligations that we actually should be paying attention to. Um, so one needs to be careful about all these time-consuming things. We have only so much time in our hands. And what I learned during these long absences away from home was that I had to prioritize. I had to be careful about who receives most of my time and then protect that and to prioritize that. Spend time with my wife, dedicate time to family, immediate family, who have raised me and have been part of my life all this time, have defined who I have become. In the upcoming Golden Globe race, I'm going to have a Turkish flag on the sail. I'm a dual citizen now. Boat is registered in the U.S. It's going to have a U.S. flag on the stern, and on the sail itself, it'll say Turkish. I wanted to put both flags up. They said, you have to choose one. Well, I can't choose one. This is who I am. So that flag is there to represent the mother who taught me compassion and loyalty and caring, becoming a caring person, and that soft side of humanity that I have absorbed from my mom. My father was taught me honor and duty and those obligations that I was talking about and how to become a man. And my brother, who has been a part of my life this as long as I've known him at age 5 when he arrived at this world. And so though that's what that flag represents for me on there. That tells me who I am and who I've become, where I came from. And I think that's a good compromise to have. And those obligations are important. Those they have meaning. They define who we are and how we carry on in our lives. The stands that we take, the way we face the world, doesn't always work the way that we intend or plan or expect. But then there's always this show up, start where you are, work with what you have, do what you can, right? Those are the principles that I apply in any workout or any difficult situation. Those are the 4. It starts with showing up.
Showing
Do
up.
not, do not be scared away. Do not hide away. Do stand up and show up. It could be a difficult stand to take in the world events. You need to be standing tall and say, this is my position. It could be a workout. You're tired that morning, you're sleepy, whatever, you don't want to do it. Show up. Trust the process and keep going.
You have a close family, you have your wife, you have a lot of people that love you, you have these people that raised you. You take this trip and you encounter a lot of different people from different cultures, different countries. Was there a common thread, a surprising thread that you discovered on this trip about people?
I think uh I think the realization that I came to was uh if I let the journey lead rather than me, people found a place for themselves in the journey. Uh, it wasn't about me. It was about the journey. When I arrived at a far beach on the other side of the ocean, I was the man with the yellow boat that arrived. It was about the journey. It wasn't about me. So when I upheld the journey and I became the spokesperson for that journey, obviously I was the engine for the journey. Then others found a way to help that journey, be part of that journey, become part of the story. And we moved together on the journey. In Otherwise, I could be, if it weren't human powered, uh, had I arrived by a yacht or some motorized means or a cruise ship, I would be just one in the crowd, right? I would be just in some other person that came the same way. It's not as interesting. There's not as compelling a story in that, and the eyes of those who greet me. And then I also found that uh, those that I needed showed up on my path. So if I confidently and faithfully applied myself to this journey and carried on, those who I needed would appear on my path. I had to trust that. I had to have that faith. And it never failed. When I was in a logistical, gridlock, somebody somewhere showed up and made phone calls or just helped or gave a shoulder, and the journey kept moving. Uh,
Did you
so
encounter that? Did you encounter that experience where people would always, like you say, just show up when they needed to? Did you know that going into it, or you kind of learned it quickly on the journey?
I learned it on the journey, I think. Just had to trust that that would happen. Had I not started, I would not have found that out. That's part of the puzzle here, the dilemma that one faces. Until we start, we don't know. And then not knowing is what stops us from starting in the first place often. So it's this paradox that we deal with on every major endeavor and undertaking. And the unknown is scary. And being in the comfortable space of comfort, that that the habits that we have, they're hard to break. And the routine that we have, we can't change it as easily. They create inertia. And to be able to get past that and start the motion takes conviction. It takes that desire and that decision to move. And that doesn't come easily. That, I think, is true of all of us, and certainly of me. And my last crossing by ocean, my last ocean crossing by rowboat was across the Pacific Ocean during the pandemic, for example. We were shut down, and during in the Six Summits project, I had completed 3 of them, and I still had Everest, Elbrus, and Aconcagua to go to. And I said, I'm not getting younger. I need to get going. Here we are, got the pandemic. Nothing is moving, but I could be the one in motion. I have a boat. I have to load it with food, push away from the dock, and be on the ocean by myself. The safest place to be during a pandemic. What could go wrong? Turns out China was being stubborn and would not give me a visa. Myanmar had a civil war and they wouldn't give me a visa, so my path west was blocked. I made it all the way to the Philippines. The impetus of that crossing was I got Everest and Elbrus to go to. I could go by Turkey on the way, another journey home theme here, and get these done before I am any older. At the same time, I was also saying to myself, am I waiting for another tragedy to get started? I have these to do, therefore I should go do them. And I'm not going to wait this time. I am making the decision myself of free will. I am going to go do this. I can't wait for a tragedy. So in the middle of the pandemic, June of 21, I launched without a visa to China. I stopped at Hawaii. I wanted to go across nonstop. I stopped at Hawaii, took a month off, and traveled to Los Angeles to seek the help of the Turkish consul general there for him to communicate with his counterpart in the Chinese consulate. It was no go. They kept pushing me back to San Francisco consulate that had said no already. So I carried on, I was on my way to Hong Kong. Hong Kong was going to give me a visa on arrival. I was struggling to make progress across, fighting all the low pressure systems that were coming my way. I was on target, staying at a steady latitude all the way to Hong Kong. But if I missed Hong Kong, either side was China. So I was going to be in trouble. My probability of reaching Hong Kong was minuscule, but I was willing to try. I am no threat to you. I'm coming from the ocean, having not seen anyone for months. No, they were going to put me on a hotel. I said, I'm not going there. So the ocean wanted me to go southwest anyway. And Guam was on my path. So I stopped at Guam. Within 2 hours of arriving, I had my extra shot. And then launched from there. I went to Philippines and landed at the Philippines. That was 239 days. That's how I got my 18 Guinness World Records now. I have the most days at sea as well, 1,084 days, and most miles rowed, 26,700 miles, solo rowing. Those got added on top of everything else. What I'm getting at is that was one of the lessons. Am I waiting for a tragedy to get started? That was really a valid question to ask, and I decided, no, I'm not going to wait. So I basically let go at that point. So the Six Summits project has been suspended, canceled, and didn't want to invest any more time into it. And I was following the Golden Globe race at the time.
Mm-hmm.
This is the continuation of the original Golden Globe race that took place in 1968 that Robin Knox Johnston finished out of 9. He was the only finisher. And since then, on the 50th anniversary of this original race in 2018, they restarted the race. This time it's starting from the bases out of Les Sables d'Olonne on the west coast of France. And that's the home. It's the mecca of offshore sailing. That's the home to Vendée Globe, Vendée Arctique, and Mini Transat. All these classic races are held every 4 years, starting from that same place. And similarly, Golden Globe race is organized every 4 years since 2018, the 50th anniversary. It was held one more time in 2022. Out of these 3 races, only 9 skippers finished. I think it was 16 in 2018 and then 18. I'm making up numbers now. It's something like that. Number of skippers joined the race, and only 3 finished in 2022, for example, nonstop and solo, unassisted. These are done in classic vessels, full keel, the hull form is of that era of the 60s. And we can't make significant changes to these vessels. We can't use modern materials like Kevlar, Dyneema, Spectra, and such are not allowed. Fiberglass is allowed. And we can't use GPS and chart plotter and water maker, for example, desalination units. These are not allowed.
Yeah, I think
And so it's a classic race and done in retro style.
in
We have
retro style.
sextants and paper charts and
Paper charts. Yeah, I was reading
HF
about
radio.
that. That's your next that sounds like it's your next challenge, the Golden Globe 2026 solo sail around the world, right? So you wouldn't be rowing, you would be sailing,
Correct.
leaving from France, heading south. You go along the Southern Sea, I guess, through is it the 5 Capes, and then you head back to France? Is that how it is?
Correct. So we would start from west coast of France, come near the coast of Brazil, heading south after a video drop at Lanzarote. The race committee will come by as we reduce sail and pick up SD cards from us of all the footage that we captured, and so that they can keep the YouTube channel going, tell the story. So there will be some technology allowed, some modern technology allowed to be able to make it viable and active to an audience. That's important, but we will be refrained from any GPS display. So the tracker that we have on hand, for example, the yellow brick trackers, the YB trackers that'll allow the world to follow us, will have their firmware updated so that the display doesn't show the GPS information. Those kinds of things. It's special in that way. We will pass by Brazil after Lanzarote, and then they were going into Cape Town, but that's proving too dangerous with the opposing currents, Gulias current and opposing winds, create very rough seas. We lost a sailboat there, Tapio Lautinen's, the Finnish sailor. He lost his boat during the 22 race, for example. So they canceled that stop. From there, we will go to Tasmania, Hobart, pull into Storm Bay at the north end of which is Hobart. We will stay north side of a given latitude in the Hobart Bay, the Storm Bay, where Hobart is, and drop sail or drop anchor, depending. We can drift, we can motor, whatever, to spend 90 minutes north of that line. And every skipper is going to do that. That gives an opportunity for the race committee to come in and check on us and do their interviews, to pick up SD cards and whatnot, recordings, footage, letters. And that's an opportunity for Nancy and friends to come by and visit without touching my boat. We can wave hands.
You can wave. Let me ask you this: you've solo circumnavigated the globe. You've done all these challenges and accomplished them, and now you're planning to join this race. What? Why? Why do you keep challenging yourself with these very difficult things?
My wife says I suffer well. So I I think having these larger than life goals gives me a way to focus my energies. It keeps me on target. It allows me to become the person who could do these things. I need to become the skipper that Clara, my boat, deserves because she crossed the finish line first in the 22 race. So that's a light, nimble, capable vessel. So I need to be the skipper she deserves. And I have no doubt that I will be competitive. I have no doubt that I will be ready at the start line. Um, Even if it required my wife and I to take a home equity line of credit, set it up just in case we need it, because sponsorships are still not happening. That's part of the game. I need to be attractive. I need to be this certain kind of person who would be worthy of support and not hear you're not good enough anymore. In my mind, that's the message I'm getting. After 18 Guinness World Records, Guinness Hall of Fame, I'm doing something that is going to be a worthy goal yet again, and I'm still not getting the support that I want. So I can hang up on that and then say, I'm not doing this, or I can do it despite that. So it motivates me in a way and pushes me to be the best that I can be. In the end, it is my journey. That's the bottom line. It is our journey with my wife, Nancy, and I am accountable to her. I have my promises to keep. I'm not going to die. We're not going to go bankrupt. I'm not going to lose her. Those are my promises to her throughout the circumnavigation. They remain so during this journey, upcoming. And so I have to carry on. That this is who I am. This is my path. And I have to be the leader that I claim to be. I have to lead the path, let them catch up with me. So that's my uh, grudge that I carry. That's the whip that motivates me. That is how I get even
Yeah.
with everything that's conspiring against my success. I do it despite that. That's part of my character. That's I've been a competitor all this time in my earlier life on the wrestling mat, later on the judo tatami, and I learned that the referee doesn't have to like me. The spectators don't have to like me. I just have to win. Pin the guy, walk away, head tall, be done with it. So, that attitude really carries on in life as well. Sometimes you just have to care less.
The
I care.
way I see it, and I could be wrong, is and please tell me if I'm wrong, uh, but I see you in a way wanting validation for your accomplishments, and it's reasonable. I think we all want that. Uh, and when we want it and we don't get it, that hurts. Uh, I think it hurts all of us. Um, but when people hear your story, right? I think they do find your journey and your life inspiring. They may not, you may not come out in all the newspapers. They may not write articles about you. They may not put you uh, on the front page of the news. But there are people, once they understand your story that will give you all that credit that 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 you're looking for in a way. I'll bet you your family and your friends, I bet you're somebody very frustrating to be friends with, to love, because they can see you being extremely stubborn, extremely motivated, and wishing you didn't have these strong, deep desires. I could be completely wrong, but this is kind of what my my 2 cents would be, but that that's what makes you who you are. You said it earlier. You have all this energy, and you have to be focused on something in the future for you to keep that edge, to keep that edge sharp. I remember I read when you completed the solo circumnavigation, you kind of went into, you had a hard time, right? Um, your wife, I think, helped you through that till
Absolutely.
yeah.
So when I finished the circumnavigation in 2012, I mentioned that I had piled all these expectations, the nonprofit goals and the mission to help children, but I wasn't getting in front of children and I wasn't getting the support that I needed. And I had spent all our resources and I felt shame, if you will, because I wasn't uh, that that recognition felt like rejection. And the lack of recognition, I should say, felt like rejection. And I felt surprised how much it meant to me to get that affirmation, to get that recognition, to be back in the society, to tell my story, to share it, and not having the venues and opportunities to do so. And the defiant part of me said, I need to get back out there, demonstrate mastery. But then I had spent all our resources and there was no way that I could budge. So I felt trapped. And that feeling of entrapment grew heavier every day. And it was a dark, cloudy period in my life. And I was depressed. So my wife was very well aware of that turmoil inside me, the anger that had built up, and I was just ready to explode and harm myself, really. And in the end, I decided that wasn't the path because I would have created more hurt than served a purpose. And so my obligation was to deal with it and to be the husband that I was supposed to be.
I
Uh,
think a lot of people would that have gone through something like that, and a lot of people don't make it out of it. How did you make it out of it?
One, I had support. I had a good understanding wife who, even though her specialty is to deal with these things, she was a counselor by trade. So, yet she was feeling helpless at times because I can be so stubborn. I mean, I had ideations. I had it all figured out. I was going to take my rowboat row out in the middle of the Puget Sound and, tie an anchor to my waist and lock it up and then just step over the edge. Nothing to clean. Nobody was going to find me. End of story. No, nothing to clean. It was all done. I was ready to check out. And in the end, I started sailing and I pursued a path and I had a new goal and started participating in races, found meaning in that, and became an instructor. And um, sailing became a new passion. I've got a captain's license. I was becoming more useful in different ways. I found a path where I could find happiness yet again. And when I got on the Pacific and went across to the Philippines, I was aware of the Golden Globe race and how it had started again in 2022 race. When I went to the closing ceremonies of the 22 race in June of 23, I met Simon Kerwin, the previous owner of Clara, my boat now, who had arrived first after his stopover at Chile to repair his wind vane. So he had a competitive boat, and I shook hands with him. Are you selling? And then I called Nancy. I said, you know what? If we don't make the start line, there will be someone who wants to buy this boat, just like I walked up to Simon, because this is a good, fast boat. Are we in or not? And yeah, she hemmed and hawed and said yes, and here
And
we are.
yes, yeah, of course she would.
Well,
Of course.
I
Yeah,
am bringing all these big price tags in front of her, and it's not easy to commit our family resources to these. So it's part of my responsibility to promote this and to seek sponsorships and to argue that, hey, the 22 race created 213 million euros of PR value, and it's a big pie. Would you want part of this? And your branding could be on my boat, and I could be a spokesperson for you. Oh, by the way, I got Guinness Hall of Fame and 18 Guinness World Records, so, and this is a fast boat, and I can deal with solitude better than anyone out there in the field. Look at me, and how about it?
how about it? Yeah. Well,
That's really trying to put the idea in their minds. What if he
yeah,
wins? Why not?
I'm
I'll be the first Turkish person to have ever raced in such a race. And there's another Turkish skipper who joined after I signed up, so we are going to be two writing history. But I could be the first American to win this as well, having dual citizenship. So
that'd be an accomplishment.
yeah,
That would be great.
no
That's
American has won the Golden Globe race until now.
yeah.
Only 9 finished anyway. So there's big potential here.
So you've done all these things, some incredible life, incredibly difficult accomplishments. When it all fades, when it all fades away, uh, and people look back on you and your life, what do you hope people remember about you and your journeys?
Well, uh, I think I would like people to remember me as one who honored his dreams and did not hesitate to begin. Just like my journey in the on my PhD journey, I let go after 6 years, but I had already a plan. If it goes to that point, I am going to move on. I did. 6 summits project. I had 3 of the summits done. I went for Everest. Ended up adding 3 more Guinness World Records along the way. Didn't get to Everest, so I have 3 more summits that I'm not going to go to. So I was willing to stop, but it is the journey that counts. He was willing to put the hard work in on the journey and grow in the process, even if the goals proved unattainable. So I think what people can remember is it's really the journey that we're on and the path that we choose to walk, the principles that we uphold, and willing to put in the hard work and the sweat equity to make progress, and then be wise enough to recognize when the path proves impossible or unattainable, and be free to change course because we have agency. In this life, short, we have limited time. We can toil on a path that's going to deplete us completely, or we can choose the path of least resistance and deviate from that That's a compromise. It's not failure. So quitting is forever. Fatigue is temporary. It's a feeling, you know. Boredom is as well. On these big crossings, my biggest problem was boredom. I had to deal with that. And when I know how to deal with fatigue and know that, yeah, you're going to get tired, keep going because this is the way it is, or rest and recover. It becomes part of the deal. And when we are willing to commit and say, yes, I am willing to take on this challenge, then it becomes part of the package and it is accepted. One doesn't get to run a marathon without having put in all the training that comes ahead of it, hours and hours of sweat equity. It's the same thing. It doesn't happen instantly. Nothing happens instantly. Every day has to be a progress toward that overarching goal. So how people should remember me? He wasn't shy to begin. He honors his dreams, really, uh, is really the bottom line there.
Yeah, that's well said. Well said. I have one more question for you. So your friend Goran Krop, who you had that fateful day with, and when he died, what do you think he would say to you today if he looked back on your life ever since that fateful day?
I'd like to think that he would look at me and say, I knew you would. I knew you could. I felt it in the handshake.
It's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Erden Eruc, thank you for being with me today. Your life to me is inspiring. You, you have, when people talk about grit, there should be a picture of you up there, because even through all the difficulties you've had physically, financially, emotionally, you've made it past them all. If you think about it, you made them past it all. And it's like that advice that you gave. You almost have to go in on faith and 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 pray that something greater will lead you to the other side. That's kind of how I see your story, and I like thinking about it. So thank you for being with me today. I wish you all the best in the future, and I'm looking forward to you sailing next year, 2026.
Sounds wonderful, Seraph, and thank you for the opportunity and thank you for being a friend.